Hey everyone, welcome to the Dales Report, and happy to be joined on the podcast once again is Jim Cacioppo. He is the CEO of Jushi Holdings. How are things?
Great, Chad. Thanks for having me. Things are going great.
I bet. How do we get this U.S. government get their act together? What the heck, huh?
That's the impossible task. I don't think cannabis is alone in the frustrations with the U.S. federal government.
Yeah.
But this is our world. But, you know, I'm actually somewhat positive. I have not been talking that game. Some of the bigger players
I know, yeah,
growth have been talking that game. So I have not been talking that game. However, from my perspective, what we've heard in the last month or so coming out of district attorneys from different states, some legislators like the Republican Mace and some of the other politicians on the Republican side of the aisle is actually quite positive. In the sense that you're showing a lot of Republican push. So the Democrats may lose control of this issue if they don't act sooner rather than later. So I'm feeling
that's interesting.
It's just me spitballing, right? I don't have a strong perspective. Getting it done in the fourth quarter as some of the market expectations, I think, is a little bit of a prayer. Now you might hear something between now and the end of the year, but it's still going to be speculative even if you hear something. Which I'm not saying the stocks won't go up on that, but having said that, nothing happens between now and the end of the year.
Well, as we know, and I've spoken to a lot of companies, fundamentals continue to be a huge performance for a lot of companies in the space. You fit into that narrative. Last month, you announced your Q3 results 2020 with revenue increase of almost 117% year over year to 54 million in adjusted EBITDA, rising 125% to 6.4 million. So looking back year over year, is this where you want to be right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would point out that that revenue growth of the triple digits is mostly all organic. We had 20 days of the large acquisition, Nature's Remedy, not large, super large, but a decent size acquisition in Nature's Remedy of Massachusetts. 20 days of revenue or less. Wow. Yeah. And then our other acquisitions throughout the year were some small dispensary. I think it was meaningless, basically. So when you look at the year-over-year growth, it's primarily organic. So when you compare that to some of the other numbers you're seeing for other operators, obviously it's a very different story at Jushi. We're growing much faster.
Yeah. Well, if I got my math correct, you have 27 dispensary locations nationwide now. So do you see kind of the rapid growth that you've had this past year, segueing that into 2022 at the same pace?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, we're projecting a number, right? Through our guidance, effectively, right? We're guiding between 375 to 425, midpoint being, 400. So if we're able to achieve that number, you're roughly, just under 100% a year-over-year growth, for the year, right? And so the pace is, slowing down modestly. But not again, compared to the rest of the industry, it's fantastic. So if you look at, I can take you through that, Chad, but if you look at, the dispensaries we opened this year, we started the year with essentially, I like to say, I think it was 13 because one of them opened up right at the end of the year last year. And when they open up, they start slow. They don't, then all of a sudden everybody, starts going to the new store. And so, and this year, we're opening, we're going to, like you said, 27, but it's even higher by the end of the year. We're opening 2 more before the end of the year. All of those dispensaries opened on this year have that slower start that you get, right? Because that's just the way it works. When you open a store, you can't advertise in most states. Maybe billboards, which is not that effective. You can't use Google or Facebook to any large degree. Ways that, contemporary people get their advertisements. So what you'll see is year over year, those stores will be giving a full year. Some of them are opening up in December and November and October, so they don't have much of a year at all. But then if you go back during the year, these stores were just ramping. So we get a full year of all the stores open, a full year of Nature's Remedy, and then we have these very large grower processors expansions, both in Pennsylvania and Virginia, which sort of go live in terms of generating revenue, certainly by the end of Q2. So when I say generating revenue, we're finishing up a lot of construction in Virginia now. you're putting in machinery and all those types of things, and you're planting. It's a 90-day growth cycle. So some of that revenue will come in the early second quarter.
Mm-hmm.
But Pennsylvania rabbit is a little bit behind in terms of the planting in 90 days. So, I don't want to get parse words, but by the end of the second quarter, we should be having a perpetual grow. That's, a week or so. Every week we're taking down a room. We're far from that now. So that's going to drive wholesale revenue growth and margins in our retail stores. So what you're talking overall company margins. And so what you're talking about is this revenue growth going into an EBITDA growth that I think is the highest of the industry. And that's what we're looking forward to this year.
It's big. It's great. I'd be curious. I don't want to speculate, but it's like, what do you think the whole marketing branding angle will be if and when there is legalization? Like, do you think that you're going to see like the standard 30-second ad on television during a game, like you do with alcoholic beverages? Like, is that coming in the US if and when there is legalization?
That's a good question, Chad. And of course, I really don't know that answer. It's not knowable. But I suspect it'll be much more like tobacco in the beginning.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Want to talk about some of the stuff you've been doing out west, some of your third quarter operational highlights. You expanded in the state of Nevada with your definitive agreement to acquire the Apothecarium, which is an operating adult use and medical retail dispensary in Las Vegas. On paper, Las Vegas looks like a very lucrative market. How has this whole market grown over the last couple of years? Because, as I said, it appears it makes sense, but I'd really be curious to know how much it has grown in that market specifically over the last 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, so that's also a very good question, Chad, because,
I'm killing it today, Jim.
Yeah, you're killing it. You obviously know cannabis. But the West Coast is actually a unique market, in and of itself, right? But it's usually the states that are on the Pacific Ocean, because that's where the very large illicit market is, and that's where it's been legal the longest. There's been a gray market, quasi-legal, all the nonsense the reason why you don't want to be big in those states too quick right now, right? For people like us who have huge investments to make throughout the country. That's really not really attracting us at our cost of capital right now. But Nevada is right next to those states. It was just legalized from an adult use perspective a few years ago. It's a control market. I think there's some misunderstanding where people think there's unlimited dispensary. There is not. There's a cap in the high 70s, I believe. I don't have all these numbers off the top of my head these days. And then it went through the toughest COVID experience, Chad.
Mm-hmm,
so you lost all the tourism, and that's pretty obvious. I mean, you get close to 50 million tourists a year in the average year, and it's growing, right? Vegas cannot be replicated. There's too much scale.
Yeah.
In what they call that in technology, network effects, where the scale of it, you can never match that entertainment anywhere in the U.S. Will it be done in Macau or someplace like that? Maybe. But it's not just gaming. It's just not gaming. It's the entertainment factor. It's food,
100%,
shopping. And so,
but Jim, is the crowd back? Like, are you seeing,
yes, I've been there twice in October. Yeah. Partly for the acquisitions, partly because we had the conference there, as you know, and we had some other activity out there. But the reality is it's full. I could not get into the hotels I preferred.
I know.
And it was expensive. But I would say this, what happened in that industry that's so unique is all the businesses that were there just radically changed how they did business.
Yeah.
So if you were at a grower processor in retail and you had this wholesale business, you just killed the wholesale business because so many guys, dispensaries just had to shut operations, and there was such little demand, coming out of tourism. So you shoved it all through your own stores, and your margins went up. And so the legacy of that is now it's one of the most vertical markets.
Yes.
For an open market where you have wholesalers, not like Florida, where Florida is the most vertical market, right?
Yes.
From what I've seen, Nevada is number 2. It's just what happened in COVID. And so it's very, very interesting. We have a small asset there prior to the closure. That asset had some real difficulty, so we knew it firsthand. In terms of we generate some sales, don't get me wrong, but the wholesale business has gotten much more difficult. Now that'll change. Everything in businesses change. It's like a person, they grow, they change. And so I'm not growing actually positively myself anymore as a physically, just to point that out. At my age, it tends to be not like my kids where they're, developing muscles and height and all these types
I can
of
relate,
things.
Jim.
But,
I can relate.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's a very interesting market. We thought we had to be vertical there. And we obviously, the apothecarium got us vertical and brought a significant number of EBITDA out of that, what I would call stranded grow processor that we had. Small, but stranded, meaning it wasn't profitable. Then we add the New Leaf transaction. I think they're running a very, very good business.
Great.
I think we're getting a lot of talent out of that. We're getting some really good genetics out of that. A lot of the people who work there have come out of the California market. So we're super excited. I call that a talent accretive acquisition. We had some of that in Massachusetts too. And we look for genetic accretive and talent accretive. They don't have to be. We're very flexible. But obviously, that's a benefit that we see in that deal, above and beyond the revenues and EBITDA.
Big difference between the states of California and Nevada. And you just outlined why. But yeah, I don't know if Nevada gets enough attention because you said, a lot of the licenses are capped. And for those that do have it, it's very lucrative knowing, as you said, like the crowds are back in full force. And it's one of the hottest real estate markets right now in North America. So
it's super fast growing. That's what you have to love about Nevada. It's, in this time of increasing taxation on the citizens of the United States and businesses of the United States, it's one of those states that's, getting the positive shift. Tesla's obviously there in Reno. And you see companies doing it. You see people moving there, which generates a lot of commerce. By the way, Apothecarium is in a great local area. It's off the Strip. It's not close to the. I mean, I don't believe it's close to the Strip. It's in like Las Vegas, but it's close to a dry area where Mr. Sheldon Adelson used to live, and Marion and his wife still lives, and they made sure that area is dry. It's called Summerlin. So
interesting.
So that dispensary is on the border of that, which makes it a really nice dispensary because that's always the kind of place you want to be.
Interesting. Learn something new every day. Want to switch our attention now across the country in your most represented state, which is Pennsylvania, where you just opened up your 17th medical cannabis dispensary. Big expansion, to say the least. I got to ask, do you expect an outsized re-rate in the stock if and when cannabis does become legal in the state? Knowing that you're well represented here?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't get it, I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
But the question is how much and how long does it last with these volatile securities we have in cannabis? But having said that, I believe people should focus on discounted cash flow analysis when valuing the business. And when you're looking at a business like ours with a tremendous growth in this, Pennsylvania, listen, we got there early, we got in cheap. You've seen what large companies, I hate to use competitors' names. Everybody tells me not to do that. But you know what? Some of them aren't so much competition and we're friendly in this kind of, but Verano's been very aggressive buying. Trulieve bought Harvest, very aggressive in buying before Harvest. Cresco just bought a bunch of assets there. Ayers bought a bunch of assets there. They paid substantially higher prices. So to the extent that look what everybody else is doing. That was their first love, and they paid up to get into that market, and we were there. So what I'm trying to tell you is I'm not unique in this point of view, and there's comfort in that. Now you could say there's a little more competition, all those types of things. We're seeing that, but that's always going to happen in a pre-adult use market. We all know it's coming, and we don't know exactly when, we don't know exactly how, but we know it's coming. It's widely supported in the state. You have the neighboring state, New Jersey. And there's an axiom in this business. I think that's the right word, Chad. You probably have better English than me, but I think there's an axiom in this business: go big early. So in other words, those grow processors and get those retail stores. I believe there'll be a short product situation. And Pennsylvania is really set up to go adult use pretty quickly. And they won't be short for medical patients because that's how the regs work, and you want them to work that way. And they'll continue to be discounts for medical like you see in Illinois, in my view. But the adult use product, is the one that, there's plenty of capacity. And then the other thing I think that your listeners don't probably understand, some of the analysts don't understand, in my view, some of the really schooled people, is they're all focused on how slow New Jersey is, going to adult use. from the law change to implementation. But that market wasn't really ready for rec because it was a very sleepy. Nobody ever talked about New Jersey as a great medical market because it wasn't. There wasn't enough dispensaries. People didn't. There wasn't the well-capitalized players really focusing a lot of assets there.
It got a lot of attention, but it wasn't ready. You're saying,
right? And New Jersey's New Jersey. They never make it easy, right? As a government. That's one of those states people are moving to places like Nevada from, right? And I think I like you. I've got smart people, and Jersey's great, but they need to get there. Pennsylvania, I think I don't know how many stores in New Jersey there are exactly, but it's something like 30 or less or something like that. Pennsylvania, by the time it goes to adult use, we'll have 200.
Wow.
Over 205 probably, right? And then
what's the state of Pennsylvania in comparison to New Jersey? New Jersey's got what, 9?
Yes, Pennsylvania has almost 13 million people.
Okay, all right.
New Jersey, you probably know better than I, because I don't focus on that state from the cannabis perspective, so I don't know it off the top of my head.
Right.
But what I do know is that 24 grower processors. I named all the companies that have come. They've invested. And listen, I think we have a great asset base. One of the things that's if you look at Jushi, one of the reasons why it should perform so well is when Pennsylvania goes adult use is we're taking our second phase takes it to 210,000 square feet or around 200,000. Let me just say that because the numbers move around a little bit. As we do our architecture, we're closing in on finishing our expansion to go to 120,000 plus 120,000. At the end of the year, first quarter of next year. And that 210, I believe we can have that in place for adult use, that second expansion or slightly after. So that's a very large productive capacity that we're coming into that market with. You can do the pounds. We've given the market in our slide presentations, the pounds that we will produce, we believe we will produce, a square feet of canopy, so people can run their numbers. And on top of that, if it happens to go, to be a short market, we believe we're close to the capability in terms of land ownership of surrounding us to get to 350,000 square feet if we want to.
Wow. Big numbers. I noticed that.
That's Illinois big. That's Cresco, Illinois big.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's GTI, Illinois big.
What do you think is the long-term, like as we sit here, a lot of people are worried, obviously, with the NDA this week in safe banking. And they're thinking like a lot of the multi-state operators are just going to continue to suck out the competition. When you look at companies like yourselves, I know this is kind of a broad range question, but where is Jushi, let's say in 3 to 5 years from now? Do we look at this as becoming like one of the key big players of the States? Do we look at this as being a buyout? Like what crosses your mind every day when you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Jushi, I believe there's about 5 tier 1 players.
Yeah.
And 5 tier 2 players. I believe we have the best track record in choosing states of any of the 5.
Yeah.
We have the best track record in doing deals. $80 million for 18 dispensaries, right? Those companies I mentioned earlier were paying between 80 and 120 for 3 dispensaries in Pennsylvania. That's in Pennsylvania. So if you look at our track record, and
80 million and 18 dispensaries.
18 dispensaries, yes. And that's a fact.
You got to write a book on that.
Yeah. And then on the grower processor side, we closed on a grower processor that, again, we think we can take to 350,000 square feet if we want to. We didn't know that when we closed. We figured we definitely could get about 130, but we're not sure what we can do after that. We got to but we thought that was good. We like optionality. We have some Wall Street lineage in us, optionality upside. So we love the price. We love the optionality on the upside. And now there's challenges in turning it around. It was an underfunded operator, but we closed it. They were out of cash. So we closed it during COVID. We signed it during COVID. We negotiated it during COVID, post the COVID. So yeah, I mean, I think that is really, really, important distinction with us. I believe our Northern Virginia asset is the best cannabis license in the business because Northern Virginia is similar to like Austin, Texas.
Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that?
Because we have the exclusive right to serve Northern Virginia through 6 superstores. Let's not call them superstores. 6 large stores so there'll be superstores. That's what I meant to say. They're not superstores, but they will be superstores.
Yeah.
And then they also can do delivery out of these, fantastic stores. And they're well placed. What makes them great is the location, the size, what we're building. And then we can go on the land we own. We can go to 250,000 square foot facility, which again is Illinois big.
Yep.
That's like Fresco, Illinois big. GTI, Illinois big. And we have that exclusive right through the medical period. And then when it flips over to adult use, we'll have a great head start that'll last for a couple of years. So I think, I've heard that others have said that other CEOs have said that, and we picked that up before we went public. We signed the deal, very, very difficult deal because there was some worrying shareholders, but we managed to do that deal. And so when you look at Jushi, to answer your question, we have this high-powered footprint with the highest growth rate. So where do we expect to be 3 to 5 years? Well, we expect to be one of the biggest, but also still the fastest growing. And when I say one of the biggest, we're already one of the top 10, right? There's a lot of cannabis companies. Yeah. But we think we're going to rise above, in terms of profitability and growth, the combination of those two, really above the tier two, the tier two group. And the tier ones are getting capped on what they can do. Certainly Curis suffers the most from that. But
so it's not a matter of if, but when you enter into that conversation as being a tier one is where you're thinking.
Correct. And I think 3 to 5 years is a zip code. And I think you're correct. And we may be the lower end of the tier one, but I think we'll be in the tier one.
I believe you will be too. It's the energy. I'm listening to you though. It's crazy how much stuff has gone on with this industry just from a pure political aspect over the last couple of months. But I've never ever seen the industry still as far as interest, whether you're operating in it, whether you're consuming it or whether you're investing in it. It's still such a huge top of mind awareness as far as interest across the country. Don't you believe that?
Oh, let's just talk about usage. When you're in LA and New York, you can't get away from it. It's just there. You can smell it. It's decriminalized. You can smell it all over the place. And I like the smell, by the way. So which is good, I guess, for the CEO of a cannabis business. I enjoy the smell. But it's all over the place. The consumers. That's what's great about the cannabis industry is consumers absolutely love the product. It's also, if you look at Instagram versus Facebook and the company now known as Meta, everybody loves Instagram because the millennials or younger than millennials love the product. And it's the most criticized product now because of, the effect, the negative effect it could have on youth that needs some government regulation and controls, right? It was unregulated. But having said all that, it's most criticized. But it's also the highest growth, most valuable, not more valuable than obviously Facebook, which is bigger, or maybe even WhatsApp, but it's what people really love on the dollar per revenue that it generates at Meta, the company known as Meta now. When you look at that, millennials love our product. Why do they love our product? Millennials are different. We all know that, but it's because they use it properly. They've been educated properly. Yep. They don't overconsume it like some of the older generation has done in the past because they can meter it. So they're growing up on the legal product. They're growing up on better product.
Look at some of the reports that have come out about how much consumption alcohol is down at major universities across the country.
But it's also the form factors. You have vapes that are tested. For as far as I know, there was no legal vapes that hurt people back when there was a vape crisis a couple of years ago. Yeah. The edibles people love, and then obviously understanding the genetics and becoming a geek on the genetics. People love that. They do it online. Our online sales account for 70%. We have one of the best online
70. Wow.
Systems. Yeah, and so what I'm trying to say is the growth from the younger people consuming more and less alcohol. Exactly right. Is going to be a long-term trend. So people worrying about this short-term competitive effect because you're going rec in Pennsylvania, everybody knows it's going to happen, or adult use. So everybody's building and prices probably go down next year more. And that's just what's going to happen. It happened in Illinois, but then it shoots up when you go adult use. So I'm not concerned about that. That's very short-termism. The market needs to focus on the long term. It's a great product. And by the way, I'd like to focus on something else because stock prices are down. And tell me if I'm talking too much. I often do, and you can
go ahead.
Okay.
I'm getting you're answering everything. I wanted to follow up with questions, but what I think people need to realize is that is there people nervous? The share prices, at a 52-week low? Yes, but I'd be more concerned if the revenue are at all-time highs, and to your point, like if the Republicans are warming up to the idea. And I got to flat out ask you, like, yes or no? Do you think come midterms next year, we see safe banking passed by then?
I think before midterms, yeah.
Okay.
But I want to point out something. I'm in New York City. I'm seeing potential investors, few investors. You know, I'm here to see more, newer folks. And we've been running a program. Michael Perlman, my head of IR, is heading it up. We're getting in touch with a lot of large institutions that are not in cannabis. We want Jushi to be part of the conversation when they can do it. Now, obviously, they're taking the meetings, multiple meetings with us, so we know they're interested. Why would you do that if you're not? But when you look at that, there is a wall of money waiting to come in, and so. I think that's,
so that's really the pros. Is there any cons right now that they're like apprehensive when you're speaking with institutions? If so, like, what are they?
Well, we're used to the tough questions. We've been hearing. I've been investing in the sector since 2000, or looking at investing since 2015. But the cons have always been there. Hey, is Amazon going to do it? Like, those people aren't going to invest. If I hear that, I'm like, I look at my watch. Hey, listen, I have to meet somebody. Can I leave? Because I'm going to let Michael get them up to speed, because they have a long way to go.
Oh,
so
if Michael
it's
could
the
hear
same
this
cons. Yeah, no, it's the same cons that you've always got.
Yeah.
And I think the people who aren't in it and aren't sort of. Some people, they were in it. The stock prices, they had a little pain. Even if they have gains, they thought they had more. So they're more fresh, and they just understand the value. So in some sense, they see less problems with it, because they're comparing this to, technology companies trading at 40, 50, 60, 100 times earnings. God knows how Tesla and EV companies trade.
Yeah.
And they're looking at growth and saying, boy, this is the cheapest growth in the marketplace.
100%. 100%. Listen, I appreciate the update. Fascinating information. Congrats, obviously, on your overall year. If I could put it down into one thing, what's the biggest thing you're most grateful for over the past 12 months pertaining to this industry?
Pertaining to the industry, the states.
Yeah.
The states have really listened to their people, by and large, and to move forward at a pace that I think is appropriate and timely.
Yeah. Well said. I don't know if you're going out west next week. If so, I might see you there. But if not, happy holidays to you and your family, and keep up the great work.
Great. Thanks, Chad. Thanks,
Jim.
Us.